So for these reasons, I don't think this is going to be. If I could just come in, Frank, I think you're going. Yeah, this will be really important to what I think you're about to say. Interruption mastery. Hi guys, my name's Deepak Shukla, founder at Pearl Lemon Sales. We're a sales training and development agency based in the UK as well as the USA and serving clients worldwide. And here today in day number 50 of 119 days of cold calling training, we're here to talk about interruption mastery. But before we get into it, feel free to click the link below to get access to the additional 17 strategies not shared in this training. So, interruption mastery, it's a interesting subject because it's so basically in calls you are of course taught to actively listen. The challenge that you've got often on a cold call is that you're pitching somebody for the first time and they could be fully ready to interrupt you, to reject the notion of a cold call, to tell you they're not interested, to tell you about the bad experiences they've had, any range of those elements. And you can often hear by somebody's tone whether their patience is wearing thin or they just don't want to continue, basically. So when any of those elements come up, you've got to tactically figure out whether an interruption makes sense or you should listen to someone vent. Now, this is where it's quite different. To be honest with you, we'll go on to talk about it. But in a longer sales call where you're selling a product and people are talking about the bad experiences that they've had, then there's a huge school of thought that talks about, for example, active listening. Now, and listening and letting someone vent and allowing them to calm down. Now it depends. There's that, and I've actually conflated the two. That's probably more similar to account management, depending upon what's happened. If you've got a service and someone's complaining about that because of the delivery not being good enough, then you've got to open up the most listening time because they work with you and they can detail all of the challenges they're having. If it's a sales environment and they're talking about a historical experience, then you've also got to listen, of course, don't get me wrong. And different people listen for different lengths of time, okay? Now, if it's a cold call, you've got the least amount of time, typically. And then you've got to, in theory, they'll have only a little bit of time to invest in telling you about it as well. In all of these scenarios, I do believe you should interrupt people, okay? It's when and how the interruption is done that's critically important here. You'll meet many a sales trainer who'll talk to you about the power of, listening, hearing someone vent, and then coming in. Now, the power of active listening also is about knowing when to actually interrupt, okay? What, give me a second. It's about knowing when it is that you should actually interrupt. And depending upon when you interrupt, you've got a really decent chance of actually improving the outcome of the call. So what will often happen, and this is the part that I think that gets missed, is that when people are upset or people are pissed off, they can quite easily work themselves up into a rage, right? So they can be like, oh, you know what, the last time that I had a service like this, I got super pissed off and this happened, and you'd be like, Frank, listen. I really hear what you're saying. I just want to say, and they'll stop and they'll listen to you. Now, the reason why this is important and why it's effective is a number of things, a number of reasons. If you can anticipate what they're about to say, then definitely interrupting makes sense because you're able to actually anticipate their needs and understand their grievances. And it's like, okay, wow, this guy is already answering the grievance that I have. And often the grievance is a feeling that manifests into words. And if you're able to anticipate it with a series of solutions, empathetic solutions, then it's going to help overcome that obstacle on the call. And this will allow you to move the prospect further down the line in terms of what's actually happening in the context of that cold call. So a good example of where on a call this might happen is saying, Deepak, I get these, Richard, hi, hello, is this Deepak? Deepak, I'd love to talk to you about our sales training. Richard, we're a sales training company. I get sales calls like this all the time. Sounds like you haven't done. Deepak, if I could politely, sir, just come in. So it's not just when you interrupt, okay? It's and when is broken down into a couple of constituent parts. It's exactly when and what at what word is being said, okay? It's also how you interrupt, and it's also what you say when you interrupt that's going to really define the outcomes of this call, okay? So as you could hear there, you'd be like, politely, sir, if I could just come in with a comment, I think I know what you're about to say. I think I understand where you're coming. So the other important element here is frame control, that you're controlling the frame. Now, look, interrupting also can very easily go into it can also go the other way when you interrupt somebody too much. So I think that with interruptions and interruption mastery is something that's done through practice. But the typical moments when you want to interrupt somebody, I would say, is when you're aware of what the complaint is going to be, and when you sense that they're going to work themselves into a kind of rage or negative state. So if they're downward spiraling, then I'd say, you don't want them to reach bottom, because sometimes there might be no way back, okay? So downward spiraling in terms of anger, in terms of upset, in terms of, I've heard this all before. And if they are critical and you can anticipate what they're about to say, then definitely, interrupting there is also important. And there's going to be other elements of this, okay, that you can interrupt in. But fundamentally, these are the remits and circumstances within which you can interrupt somebody. And whew, what an interesting area of sales. I think in cold calling, you're absolutely probably taught not to interrupt. I do think you should interrupt. We'll go on to talk about more elements of it right now. So there you have it, guys. Anyway, interruption mastery.
Remember, we've got 17 gated strategies just waiting for you. All you need to do is bing, subscribe, as well as click the link in the description below to get access to those 17. Get some.